Welcome to Time to Teach with Tammy, the podcast that gives tips, advice, and suggestions to teachers by a real teacher. So sit back and enjoy. And oh yeah, don't forget to subscribe. We're back. Welcome to episode 75 of Time to Teach. Today's episode is entitled Understanding Attention Deficit Disorder. So I do kind of want to preface this by saying when I say ADD, I'm going to include like all forms. So attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I listen to a lot of podcasts on attention deficit disorder. It's something I'm definitely interested in. I just feel like every year I've got a couple or more kiddos who definitely display different traits that, at least appear to be falling under ADD or some type of ADD. So I'm a little unclear if it's only referred to as ADD now and ADHD is maybe under that umbrella term, or ADHD is maybe the umbrella term. I'm not really sure, and maybe there's someone out there who can clarify that for me. Yes, I have looked online and I still see those both of those terms used, which is why it's still a little unclear to me. But I did hear a podcast and I cannot remember now which one it was, and it said that it's basically now is being referred to under an umbrella term, which I'm remembering the umbrella term is ADD now. But I just don't know if that's correct, if I'm remembering incorrectly and the umbrella term is ADHD, or if that was just incorrect information. So that's why I just want to clarify, if I say ADD, I'm really referring to that as an umbrella term for any type of attention deficit. So that's what today's episode is going to be exploring. I will also say I'm in a different location recording. By different location, I mean I'm still in my house, but as opposed to being in the room where I typically record, I am sitting on the couch in my living room. So there is definitely some traffic. You may hear that. But I really don't feel like lugging everything into my back room, where perhaps the sound is a little bit better for audio recording, but I'm just having one of those days. I just would rather stay where I'm at. So if you hear background noise, just remember, people, it's real life, and that's why. Now, when I initially started to plan for today's episode, I was kind of thinking that I'm going to do probably a series of these and call this part one, but and I do still plan on doing more in the future, because today it's really probably going to be a very brief, well, maybe not brief, but kind of like a rough scratching at the surface of it. But I don't know when I'm going to be making the next episode to go with this. So instead of making it a series and making it a part one and a part two, I'll just distinguish it with its different titles, because I definitely would like to zoom in a little more on the different types of attention deficit. So I'm not going with a series, but you can definitely expect that I will have more episodes in the future. I don't know how soon, I don't know how far away, but I definitely want to take a deeper dive into some of the different types. So having said that, again, today is just really going to be more of, surface scratching. I'm primarily going to be drawing from an article that I'm looking at. I will link it in the note. So it's attitudemag.com is the website. And this particular article that I am looking at is entitled ADD Symptoms versus ADHD Symptoms, What's the Difference? And of course, those both terms are still being used, so you can see where that's only going to add to my confusion of it. Anyway, but it does kind of open up, the article opens up with saying that both are included in the medical diagnosis of ADHD. So, attention deficit disorder is a complex condition with two distinct presentations, both of which are officially known as ADHD. So this kind of tells me that's supposed to be the umbrella term. Again, I want to see more articles confirming that. ADD is the term commonly used to describe symptoms of inattention, distractibility, and poor working memory. ADHD is the term used to describe additional symptoms of hyperactivity and impulsivity. And then again, both are included in the medical diagnosis of ADHD. Okay, so just kind of beginning this article, we can look at, they kind of go into defining the difference between the two types. So ADD is really, as it says, like a quieter presentation of the disorder. Okay, so it says, and now I'm quoting, commonly associated with symptoms of poor working memory, inattention, distractibility, and poor executive function, and is more common among girls and women and is not associated with hyperactivity. Now, in case anyone is unfamiliar with executive functions, I think as educators we need to be very familiar with what these are. But it basically it kind of speaks to how someone is in terms of organizing, planning, prioritizing. So of course these things can, when there are deficits or these are weaknesses, and typically, associated with attention deficit, you can see how it makes everyday managing of life very challenging. And if you think of your kiddos who have issues like this, typically it is connected with, like if you're seeing a student who's, they're terribly unorganized, they lose things all the time. To me, these are warning signs. To me, these are kind of red flags, and I really like to pay attention to that because, instead of, I think we can overly criticize anyone really, but students, and be like, they're just, so poor at managing their belongings. But really, I think those behaviors we need to pay attention to because they're telling us a bigger story that, hey, there's probably something going on with the student. Maybe not always, but oftentimes those are the signs that we really, really need to pay attention to. So continuing right along, the article then goes into talking more about the ADHD. So it says the term ADHD is commonly used to describe what doctors call ADHD. I just feel like that's such a funny way to word that. Predominantly hyperactive type. The symptoms associated with this diagnosis align more closely with the stereotypical understanding of ADHD, a squirmy, impulsive individual, usually a child, bursting with energy, who struggles to wait his or her turn. Technically speaking, ADD is no longer a medical diagnosis. Since 1994, doctors have been using the term ADHD to describe both the hyperactive and inattentive subtypes. Okay, so if that's correct, that's meaning that saying ADHD is the umbrella term. Still, many parents, teachers, and adults continue to use the term ADD when referring to inattentive symptoms and presentations of attention deficit disorder. Okay, so that's pretty interesting, and is probably why I'm saying I'm kind of confused. Not really confused, but if there is an actual umbrella term, if this is correct, it's saying ADHD is the umbrella term. But again, I hear both terms all the time, and I really was remembering that ADD was the umbrella term, but again, I probably was just confused and or not remembering correctly. So if this is correct, then ADHD is that umbrella term. Instead, it's just kind of, used with the idea that there are 3 different types of the ADHD, which we'll get into right now. But I think the important thing to note there is that I think when we think of that term, we always tend to think of the hyperactivity part. And I think it's hugely important to remember that that is only one type. So there could be a student who is struggling with attention deficit disorder, and it maybe doesn't come off as hyperactivity. So let's get into what those 3 types are. Okay, so the 3 different types. So ADHD, primarily inattentive type. People who describe themselves as having ADD most likely have inattentive type ADHD, so inattentiveness. Symptoms include forgetfulness, poor focus, organization, and listening skills. Inattentive ADHD often resembles a mood disorder in adults, while it's seen as spacey, apathetic behavior in children, particularly girls. So I always think of that like when you think of someone who's maybe kind of forgetful, or you're daydreamers, just because someone's daydreaming doesn't necessarily mean it's a disorder, but you kind of see like those kids, I think, you might not necessarily think of them as attention deficit students, but they're the ones who are like, it's less loud, I would say, because you're going to really see those hyperactive kids where this one is like, oh, I'm just kind of lost in my thoughts. So huge difference, I think, in terms of what the behavior is looking like. And, it's easier for that to maybe not call our attention, but we need to pay attention to those. Okay, moving along. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 6 of the following symptoms must be present to warrant a diagnosis of ADHD, primarily inattentive type. So often fails to give close attention to details or makes careless mistakes, often has difficulty sustaining attention, often does not seem to listen when spoken to, often does not follow through on instructions and fails to finish projects, often has difficulty organizing tasks and activities, often avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to engage in tasks that require sustained mental effort, often loses things necessary for tasks and activities, is often easily distracted, and is often forgetful in daily activities. Okay, second type, ADHD, primarily hyperactive impulsive type. This is probably one that you're going to be more familiar with, because this is the one that I feel really calls our attention and stands out and is kind of the typical, when we think ADHD, this is your typical, the typical image that might come to mind. So this subtype encompasses many, I'm reading again, of ADHD stereotypical traits. A child, usually boy, bouncing off the walls, interrupting in class, and fidgeting almost constantly. In reality, only a small portion of children and adults meet the symptom criteria for this type of ADHD. So according to the DSM 5th edition, I believe, 6 of the following symptoms must be present to warrant a diagnosis: fidgets with hands or feet, or squirms in seat, leave seat in classroom or in other situations in which remaining seated is expected, runs about or climbs excessively in situations in which it is inappropriate, feelings of restlessness in teens and adults, has difficulty playing or engaging in leisure activities quietly, appears on the go or acts as if driven by a motor, talks excessively, blurts out answers, has difficulty waiting for their turn, interrupts or intrudes on others. And then the third type is combined type ADHD. Okay, so again, it occurs if you have 6 or more symptoms, each of inattentive and hyperactive impulsive ADHD. Okay, so how does it look different? How does the hyperactive impulse ADHD look different from inattentive ADHD? So you're going to see inattentive ADHD symptom 1 is the careless mistakes. So this could be like a child rushing through something, like quickly just trying to get something done, misses questions, and especially like questions that he or she actually knows the answers to. They might skip a whole section. In terms of an adult, it says they may fail to carefully proofread a document or an email, and that might lead to even more problems. Okay, difficulty sustaining attention. So a child with inattentive ADHD may have trouble staying focused during organized activities like sports or games or any kind of task. An example given is picking up his or her room. And whereas the adult may struggle to maintain attention during lengthy readings or extended conversations. Okay, failure to listen. Children and adults with inattentive ADHD may seem absent-minded when spoken to directly, even though there may not be an obvious distraction. Often does not follow through on instructions and fails to finish schoolwork, chores, or duties in the workplace. Starts tasks, but quickly loses focus and is easily sidetracked. I really like how this article kind of gives you signs that you might see in children and adults. It's kind of nice. Moving on, difficulty with instructions. Many children, teens, and adults with inattentive ADHD struggle to follow through on instructions, failing to finish schoolwork, chores, or other duties in the workplace. Really kind of repeats the failure to listen, very similar to that. Poor organization. Organization can be a challenge for those with inattentive ADHD at any age. A child might struggle with keeping her locker organized. A teen may find it difficult to keep college applications straight. An ADHD adult might feel overwhelmed by work emails at the office. A lack of organization often goes hand in hand with messy work, poor time management, and failure to meet deadlines. Again, that goes into those executive functions, which a lot of times when you see persons who are struggling with attention issues, you're going to see those executive functions at play. They just have a terribly difficult time with it. Avoidance of difficult tasks. Adolescents and adults with inattentive ADHD often have a hard time completing projects that require sustained mental effort, like lengthy homework assignments, reviewing documents, and filling out forms. Okay, number 7, chronic misplacer. Frequently misplacing important items like keys, eyeglasses, cell phones, and school materials can be a sign of inattentive ADHD in kids, adolescents, and adults. The good thing is, I think when it comes to some of these executive functions, that's where really understanding what's happening can help, where we can provide, or even if they're seeking occupational therapy, we can provide strategies that help them organize, strategies that help them, like have a place where all your things go. So if everything has a place, you know where to go, you're only putting in that place. Those kind of strategies can be very helpful for these students and even adults, I think, so that they can better manage things like that. So I think, it's not having a diagnosis like this doesn't mean your world or the child's world has come to an end. It just means that, hey, they're really going to need a little more guidance and help to be able to manage those areas of their life, especially so that by the time they reach adulthood, they're better capable of managing those everyday things like organizing, planning, prioritizing. Okay, number 8, easily distracted. Children with inattentive ADHD may become distracted in the classroom by extraneous stimuli, while adults may simply drift off into unrelated thoughts and lose focus on the task at hand. Okay, number 9, forgetful. Whether it's remembering to take the trash out, pay a bill, or return an email, inattentive ADHD often presents as forgetfulness, especially in teens and adults. So again, just, signs and symptoms that we need to look at and pay attention to. So I think that's kind of coming at the end of this article. Not hugely long, but definitely different nuggets of information. I think when I am in the classroom and I'm just observing student behavior, because that's really something that I'm interested in, I just kind of pay attention. And, you want to just kind of remember, yes, you're going to have some kids who might be hyperactive and impulsive, and that is what's glaringly going to call our attention. But we also need to be on the lookout for those students who might have a more quieter form of attention deficit, and just kind of see, are they spacey? Do they daydream? Is there forgetfulness? Do we see issues with executive functions? And that's when we want to look deeper into what's really going on. And we as educators can really help by just helping students, give them those strategies that's going to help them better manage their day-to-day life, even helping guide parents so they know different things that they can do. Like I have a student right now. I have a couple of students actually, but two in particular, who are always losing their tools that they use every day. So pencils, several times a day they're losing their pencils. Their folders that we use, because we really work out of folders. I have word work folder, writing folder, an orange math folder. All of them are different colors, really. And they're constantly losing these items. So I'm in the process of creating a checklist for one in particular who, from minute to minute, the student may have it 1 minute and the next minute it's lost, and then we find it and then it's lost again. So I'm in the process of creating a checklist, and I basically said every day your job is going to be checking your cubby to make sure that you have those items in your cubby. And my hope is that just by going through that process, it will become a little more innate and automatic. I don't know, we'll see. But I do think checklists can definitely be something that helps the child remember that, hey, these are things that I need to really keep track of. And then, of course, ideas like maybe one day it will be easier and that checklist won't be needed. But until then, it's kind of where we're at right now. All right, you guys, that's it. Like I said, today was more of like scratching the surface and getting a better understanding of ADHD, which according to this article, that would be the umbrella term. I'm not sure. And again, that article is online at attitudemag.com, and once again the article name is ADD symptoms versus ADHD symptoms. What's the difference? I definitely plan on doing more of these episodes in the future, because I really think each type of ADHD is worthy of examining a little more. So we will just kind of see where this takes us. So you can expect more of that in the future. So that's it, you guys. It is time for my wins and fails segment of the week. Win for the week, we have a 3-day weekend. I mean, you really cannot have a bigger win than that. I mean, I guess technically you can if it's like spring break or summer break, but 3-day weekends are, pretty big wins. I'm very happy about that. Fail for the week. I think I touched on last week's episode how just keeping the kids focused continues to be a fail. And yeah, it's still something that, just keeping their focus when it's hot, I'd say that's continued to be difficult. So really, again, it's kind of created because we're going into our hot season and kids are drained. So I'm not saying this is a fail because it's my fail, but it's just something that I'm struggling with right now. So I don't know, still working on that. But that's it, you guys. I thank you so much for joining me. If you have something you'd like to add to the conversation, I'd love to hear from you. You can tweet to me. My Twitter handle is at TammyJ123. That's at TAMIJ123. Until next time.
Wait a minute. Wait 1 minute. Before you go, don't forget you can catch our show notes online at www.timetoteach.libsyn. That's libsyn.com. We're also on Facebook at Time to Teach. Don't forget to check out our Facebook group, Teachers for Effective Curriculum. And if you're an educator with your own podcast show, I invite you to join our brand new Facebook group, Teachers Who Podcast. Let's grow a community where we can network, problem solve, and discuss anything and everything podcast related. I'll see you there.